Hola, everybody. It is the last video of the semester, and I hope everybody is as excited as I am about it. um, so, note, I didn't know if I needed to do this video in English or in Spanish, so I picked English. What is this? I picked English because it's just a little bit easier for me, and I figure y'all would understand more of what I was saying if I spoke English. Okay. So, that doesn't look much better. Anyway. Okay. So I picked Cuba. I actually picked my topic because it was 3 a.m. on a cold Valentine's morning, and I was watching the Travel Channel. And something about Little Havana in Florida came on, and I was just so intrigued because everybody looked like they were having such a good time, and it was so bright and vibrant, and the food looked so good. So I figured that I'd go ahead and just write about that for my project. I know that's like such a deep and meaningful meaning for how I came up with this, but you know. So, some facts about Cuba. I don't know if I need to read you my paper or just tell y'all some stuff I found, but I'm just going to tell y'all stuff I found. If it's wrong, I'll redo it, but you know. Okay, so Cuba is actually the largest island in the Caribbean. So, if you take the Dallas Fort Worth, metropolitan area 5 times, that makes Cuba. Like that's a pretty big island when you think about it like that. Holds 11 million people. Like that is how many people live in Cuba. So, largest island, big population, lots of people. So, what I actually thought was interesting is Cuba. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. Cuba shares a beginning with the United States or America, whichever. So Christopher Columbus, while he was doing his big expedition sailing the ocean blue, he found Cuba in 1492, which in 1492 is when he found America. So here's my question. I couldn't find if he found Cuba before or after America, but regardless, I still don't understand how Columbus thought that he was in India when he was in America, unless he was just ridiculously lost. Like, I personally don't know much about Christopher Columbus, but people had been trading with India already for spices and goods. How did he? It's a whole nother topic. I just think. Anyway, so after that, all right. I'm just gonna go through the outline of my paper. So if I take a break, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at because having a hard time reading today. All right. Actually, here's an interesting thing. Cuba has been in a lot of wars, like a lot. Cuba. Here's conflict, and then here's Cuba. From 1868 to present day, Cuba has been involved in 20 different wars. Yeah, 20. And that's wild. And I mean, you could probably tally up that for America too, but we're a super nation. We're like a big, I think a superpower is actually what I mean to say. Like, we're huge. Like, America, Cuba. Like, we have millions, maybe billions more people than them. I just find that wild that they've been involved in so much. Actually, I was gonna save this for the end, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it now. So when you look at Cuba, you see old cars, you see all of their cars are from 1950 or before. The reasoning for that being is when Fidel Castro took office, he put a ban on travel. He made it, or a ban on imports. He made it so expensive for Cubans to get new cars that it just wasn't even worth it at that point. Nobody could afford to do it if it was even allowed. They couldn't even import parts. So Cuban cars, created in 1950 or before, still running, all of the parts on them, innovated. They've made from scrap metal or wood, or they've just designed them themselves. And I think that in itself shows a lot about the Cuban culture. It shows that they're really innovative, and I think that's like so awesome. I sound like a total ballet girl right there. Let's see. So, Fidel Castro. I wanted to talk about that. Cuba is one of 5, Laos, China, Vietnam, Cuba. There's one more. There is Did I say Vietnam? I don't know. Okay. Regardless, I found my notes. So, there's 5 self-declared communist states in the world. China, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Cuba. And what's wild about that is Cuba has had the same government for 60 years. Fidel Castro just resigned, and I believe his brother just resigned too. But Fidel Castro was in charge of Cuba, the head honcho, for 60 years. Can you imagine that? Like, it makes me wonder, how old was he when he came into office? Was he like 15? Who knows? Not me, because I wasn't smart enough to look up that fact. Probably should have. But yeah, since they're, I just think we have a communist nation less than 100 miles from our shores. From a trip from Florida to Cuba is close. How do I say that? Cuba is closer to Florida than we are to Dallas. And that's wild. Just ridiculously wild. Okay. So, the next part of my video is about Cuba's media culture. It's not really, I don't know how to say it. Not really media, but their arts and such. They are such a vibrant, when you look at Cuban paintings or Cuban painters, their art is so bright and expressive. It's gorgeous. Cuban art is some of the prettiest art you will ever see, and I wish I would have printed some off so I could like show you, but it's just so pretty. And then Cuban music. So Cuban ancestors are actually, a lot of them are slaves from Central Africa, and a lot of their music has that very soulful, very deep meaning. So out of the 10 most popular dances in the United States, 4 of them are from Cuba. Like the rumba, the salsa, the mamba. And the mamba actually means conversation with God in the language of the slaves. I don't know if I wrote that down. Kikongo. That is what the language is. And it developed in 1930. So that's only, that genre of dance has only been around for 70 years. Like, I just think that's so cool. Okay, so my last fact I was looking through here. Well, I'll do a more boring one first. Actually has a story to go with it. So, the top 2 exports in Cuba, if you couldn't guess, you probably know one. So I'm going to go ahead and say cane sugar and then cigars. And when I was telling my family about this, they were like, "Oh, Lizzie, you picked that because of cigars." So I'm going to tell you a story of why cigars are the most wretched things on this earth. If I didn't say this in a previous video, I work at a home improvement store. I work at Lowe's. So I have contractors come in have nothing against contractors. Some of the funniest people I've ever met. But I had this one, and this was in a different town. This isn't in Mount Pleasant. I just transferred to Mount Pleasant. He would come in every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. on the dot, right when we opened, chewing on this cigar. And I remember my first encounter with him. Ugh. He brought it into the store and he was chewing on it. I said, "Sir, like, we're a tobacco-free environment. You can have that." And he was like, "I can have blankety blank blank." And I was like, okay. And he was like, "It's Cuban." And I was like, cool. Like, I'm 18. I was 18. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, okay, cool. Keep it, I guess. Oof. And he was like, "You know what?" And he moved the cigar a little bit. It was dripping wet. And all of this, I can still remember how it looked and how it smelled. All of this cigar goop, saliva, tobacco spilled onto my counter, like dripped off. And like this, a puddle, legit, like probably that big, like, probably not a perfect circle, but like was on my counter. And it smelled so bad. And from that day forward, I have not been able to even look at cigars without just, oh. But no, cigars, very popular, kind of a luxury item. They're totally bad for you. Tobacco is bad for you. Nicotine's bad for you. I wouldn't recommend it, but do whatever floats your boat. Anyway, so my favorite fact. It's really not that important. I just think it's really cute. So when people fly over Cuba, it looks like a little crocodile. So like Spanish natives call it El Cocodrillo or El Cayman, which basically means crocodile and alligator. So like they call the whole nation of Cuba a little crocodile. I just think that's so cute. Right. So the next part of this video, I saw that we were supposed to talk about a little bit of what we've learned in this class. And I've really learned a lot. Let me grab my book real quick. Because there was an example. I am still not very great. I'm not even going to lie to y'all. With indirect object pronouns, we didn't go over these in high school. So when I write my sentences, I never use them. So I think that has been one of the biggest learning points for me. And spelling and accenting. I have learned so much about that, and this class has made me more comfortable to try and speak Spanish, so I'm definitely grateful for that. This is probably the most boring video I've done. I'm normally really upbeat and outgoing. I've just been kind of sick all week. But yeah, this has been a great semester and a great class, and I am ridiculously excited for Spanish 2. So I hope all of you have a great summer, and hopefully I'll see you in the summer.